This is the funding year 2023 service specifications template. This document can be completed and filled out with the additional information about the internet access service that the library is seeking. On this document, you can include specifications about the service. This will give the service providers bidding on provision of those services additional information to better allow them to provide you with quotes that are more accurate and better suited to the library. At the top, we have a field for the library's name. I will be entering a sample library name. After that, we have the BEN number, the build entity number, and again, this will just be a sample here, but the BEN is important because it identifies the library in the EPC portal. You'll notice that the sample library name also populated down here in the template and goes on to say that sample library request proposals for delivery of internet access and service and connectivity to the street address of the library that requires the service. So I will enter a sample address here. You will want to include the full address of the library, including zip code. In the second paragraph here, it details the current bandwidth that the library currently receives, in addition to information on the maximum bandwidth that the library may be seeking. So you can check for your internet bandwidth on your internet bill, or check with your service provider, or check on your internet contract or agreement if you have one available. As a sample, we can include something like that: 100 megabits per second, Mbps with a capital M. And you'll notice that that also populates down here in the current bandwidth section. And that is because you are going to be requesting internet bandwidth that is at a minimum consistent with the current internet bandwidth that you are receiving right now. We don't want you to have to lower your bandwidth or consider bids that are going to reduce the availability of bandwidth that the library already has. In addition to this minimum of current bandwidth, there is going to be that higher maximum bandwidth as well. Many of the Texas libraries are currently receiving lower levels of bandwidth than 1 gigabit per second. If that is the case for your library, 1 gigabit per second is a reasonable amount to include here. If the library is already receiving 1 gigabit per second internet speeds, you may want to consider a higher bandwidth. If you have questions about this, please reach out to us and we can discuss. Additionally, this paragraph requests proposals for month-to-month service or contracted service. Service providers submitting proposals for contracted service are requested to provide 12-month, 36-month, and 60-month pricing. This will allow the library to potentially consider a number of bids from service providers that are either month-to-month or on a contracted basis for 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years. A multi-year contract is potentially useful because it may allow you to continue using that multi-year contract for the duration of that contract and not have to file a Form 470 each year as you would with month-to-month services or with a 1-year contract. In the third paragraph here, all contracts must allow for bandwidth increases up to the 1 gig max amount that we described here throughout the term of the contract. Additionally, there's some other provisions that may be included within the contracts that this service specifications document is seeking, such as voluntary renewals that may allow the library to renew their contract for 12-month periods at the end of the contract. This paragraph also requests that all costs associated with delivering the service to the library, including installation charges, special construction charges, lease manager routing charges, and any other related charges, be included in the proposals. At the bottom of this first page, we also have a timeline. This is useful not only to the library, but also to service providers potentially submitting proposals in response to this Form 470. This top line essentially starts the timeline, and that will be the date that the Form 470 is certified. So let's assume a date here. When you file your Form 470, make sure that the service specifications timeline is up to date based on the date that you certified the Form 470. The next line here will describe the deadline to submit questions. Creating a 10-day question and answer period in the timeline is useful because it allows service providers to have a period of time in which they can submit clarifying questions if the information in the service specifications is not sufficient to provide their most accurate quotes and proposals. So what we can do here then is September 19th, 2022. And again, that's the date of certification plus 10 days. Having that 10-day buffer is useful, once again, because it does allow you as a library to provide that clarifying information. And the way that that information will ultimately be clarified on the Form 470 is with an RFP amendment attachment, in which you lay out the questions that you received from vendors during that Q&A period, in addition to your answers to them in a single document. This makes it so that all questions asked of the library and those answers can be publicly and openly shared with all potential service providers and all potential bidders on these services. So September 20th, 2022, question deadline plus 1 day. Please bear in mind that if one of these days falls on a weekend or on a day when you are not available to either submit those questions and answers or address some of these questions, you may want to consider adding some extra days to the timeline. So September 19th is a Monday, September 20th is a Tuesday, but if you were to have the question and answer, the deadline to submit questions on the preceding Friday, September 16th, you may want to consider making the Q&A posted in Epic date the following Monday, if that will be the next day that you're able to post that. Finally, in the timeline, we have the last day to submit proposals. And essentially this creates a deadline by which service providers must submit a proposal. We recommend adding 28 days to the date that the Q&A document was posted in EPC. E-rate rules dictate that a minimum 28-day period must elapse from the posting of the Form 470. That bidding period must be open for 28 days before any proposals in that 28-day period can be evaluated. Additionally, if new information is provided on the questions and answers document posted on this previous day in the timeline, those answers may change the scope of the service specifications and of the services requested on the Form 470. If that is the case, then keeping a 28-day buffer from that day is very useful and will help you avoid compliance issues with those E-rate rules. And this is part of the reason why filing early in the year is very useful, because it allows for a longer timeline during which questions can be asked and answered, and that information then can be reflected on the Form 470, giving service providers time to provide proposals based on that information in a fair and open way. So, September 20th plus 28 days. 28 days is 4 weeks. So that is going to put us at October 18th, 2022. Again, it is useful to consider this entire timeline and think about when you will be available to post this Q&A and evaluate these bids at the end of the proposal submission deadline. You may want to create a calendar reminders for yourself. E-Rate Central's LCT team will be providing regular reminders as well. Our second page of the service specifications includes some standard language regarding cost of eligible services. Additionally, we have a section here in this paragraph to provide information on the library contact name. That will be your name if you are handling E-Rate for your library. We'll include a sample name there, and we'll include a sample email address here. And this way, service providers can submit those questions and proposals to your email address, and then also to us at lct@eratecentral.com. Additionally, you may want to allow walkthroughs at the library. A walkthrough could be helpful to the service provider to help provide a more accurate quote based on the services that the library is going to require to install that new internet, whether it's a new circuit or an existing circuit or whatever the case may be, or if the library may need a leased router. There's a variety of reasons why a walkthrough may be useful. If you want to create a walkthrough period on the timeline discussed on the previous page, you may want to consider doing that and then creating a deadline by which that must happen. Finally, we asked on this service specifications document that service providers submit proposals that cite the Form 470 number and the name of the library, clearly indicating that it's a proposal for internet access service. That said, you may still receive proposal emails at your email inbox or at your spam or junk folder that are not clearly labeled in this way. Please be sure to check your spam and junk folder as well as your email inbox for any potential service provider emails that are sent to you, or that they may be included in the evaluation.